Hello and welcome back to another video from the Mike Live and 5 channel. Today we're going to be going through the draw at home to West Ham, slightly underwhelming. We've done a full kind of reflection on the result on the Eden Road podcast channel, so if you already haven't checked that out, go do so now. It's kind of mixed feelings coming out of that game, I would say. It really took that West Ham goal for us to kind of wake up, and we're going to go through it. We're going to look at the momentum of the game, some of the chances as well, but it was a little disappointing to see Brentford go 1-0 up so early, and we're going to touch on that as well for the third time in a row, and not really capitalise on our dominance, especially sort of kind of after that goal, about 10 minutes after that. And then as soon as West Ham scored, they had a little spell of pressure and we were on top for the rest of the game. It was just kind of reflecting on it. I feel like we were definitely the better team, and if we wanted to take the game to West Ham instead of being a little bit passive, then we definitely would be walking away with 3 points. And it kind of puts a lot on this next game against Wolves at the G-Tech, going into the international break, off the back of a slightly underwhelming performance at home to West Ham, a game that we probably felt we were going into as the favourites, definitely considering their start to the season. It just puts a little bit more pressure on this Wolves game. And this video, I'm going to look more at the Wolves game in depth because I'm recording this on Thursday, the Wolves game's on Saturday. So I've picked out a few highlights from Wolves' previous games. I've got their lineup sorted. We're going to look at some stats this time as well. And I'm actually going to be posting this video on the Ealing Road podcast YouTube account as opposed to my personal YouTube account, which is at Mike Live and 5. Just because we haven't done a preview on that channel yet. So I feel like this is a good preview for that. And I kind of want to bring some of that audience over to the personal channel. So I'm hoping this goes out to a wider kind of spectrum of people. And like I say in every video, please subscribe. We're doing this every single week. Plus, I'm just waiting for some news bits to happen, but nothing newsworthy has happened yet. Over the international break, we're going to get some videos planned as well. So if you haven't already, please go do subscribe to Mike Live and 5 on YouTube. Check me out on TikTok. And also you're going to be watching this on the Eden Road podcast account. So if you haven't subscribed to that already, go do so now as well. Let's just jump straight into the video. So this is what I want to start with, right? This was Brentford's lineup against West Ham. Obviously, I've got the Wolves players in there for now, but I think going into the West Ham game, we all wanted a 4 at the back, and that's what we started with. Ayer on the left, Pinnock Collins in the middle, and Sepp on the right. And I think Sepp is one of these players that is actually one of the players that's come in and is really starting to prove himself. He played well against Man City. He's played well again at right back, and Craig mentioned it a few times on the pod about how if we're going to go with a right back because we're forced to play without a recognised right back this season, who's going to deputise there? Is it another season of Mads Roerslev at right back who is a little frustrating sometimes, or can we convert Sepp from a centre half into a right back? And Pep would be proud because this trend of playing centre halves across the back line is very new. You think of City and how they do it with Vardio and Ake and Stones and Diaz. They just overload that back line with centre halves, and we've started to we are doing it now. Ayer's playing on the left, Sepp's on the right. But I think the position we lacked in this game, and it goes back to what we were saying against Spurs, Norgard is just so important to this team. You don't realise how good he is until he's gone. Having Vitali, who we've loved at Brentford, his time at Brentford. I saw today actually, on the day of recording, that it was his 4th year at Brentford since we signed him, the 4 years ago. And Norgard just in midfield, he's just a massive miss. I think he's a lot more comfortable on the ball than Vitali is. I think he looks forward more than Vitali does, and he wins the ball a lot more often than Vitali does as well. But I think going into this game, I just want to highlight here, Brian and Bumo on the right, which I think is what a lot of people expected. Kevin Schade down the middle, and KLP on the left. KLP was quite rigid with this system. He was always down the left, always terrorising defenders. The game kind of got away from him towards the end of that game, but I think this is what we all expected. Whether Schade would play on the right or whether Brian would play down the middle was something that we were going to see. But as we kind of saw in the first minutes of the game, it was actually more like Schade on this side and Brian down the middle. And they did interchange quite a bit. And I do like that because I think we've kind of spoken about what we lose in Wissa. We lose Brian and Wissa's interchangeability. We lose Wissa's hold-up play. But I liked the way that Brian and Schade were constantly swapping, especially in the first 20 minutes of the game. And that's what we're going to go into now. So, first minute of the game, again, Brentford with the fast start. There's been loads made of it. First team in Premier League history to score in 3 consecutive games in the first minute. And Jamie Carragher did a full breakdown on Monday Night Football of what we do from set pieces and how Keith Andrews has kind of masterminded this weird phenomenon through which Brentford keep scoring these early goals. Long ball comes up, overloading these areas. Ball comes out to Schade, and I want to talk about Schade and KLP as well in perspective of the Wolves game. We're going to get onto it, but I think in this Wolves game, there is a lot of joy to be had down Nelson Semedo's side, which is KLP's side, and those two have history. We will come back to this. But anyway, goes down to Sharda. Sharda whips in a cross. We've seen this all before, so I'm just going to kind of skip through it. Collins whips a ball in, and Fabio Carvalho, who I want to talk about quite a lot in this video, is just, I feel like he is maybe the missing ingredient, and I don't think we've seen enough of him to kind of fully see his potential or kind of see where he goes. But in this game, his ability in the press and he's someone I'd hate to play against. He's nimble, he's quick, he never gives up a second ball, is constantly running his men down, and I love to see it from a player that's just come into the club. It's like he's not taken any time to get used to things. His Premier League experience is limited, yes, but I love his ability to get stuck in, and he ends up getting the assist for this goal. And just Brian volleys in the box is straight cash money every single time. I've spoken about it on this channel before, but when Brian gets into these positions in the box, on his right, on his left, he gets his body down low, he gets his foot over the ball, and it's another incredible finish from him. I love the goal scoring form that he's taken into this season. There were question marks whether we're going to be able to score as many goals, and unfortunately for us, it looks like the distribution of goals is something that we're going to have to work on, because it cannot be Brian scoring all of our goals. But at the moment, 5 goals in 6 games, it's a really, really impressive return. And they're not just simple goals as well. Like, if you go back through the goals that he's scored this season, a lot of them are like this, first of all, but a lot of them aren't just simple finishes. They're finishes that we wouldn't expect of Brian to have finished maybe a year into his Brentford tenure, or a couple of years into his Brentford tenure. But now once he gets into these positions, you are just thinking goal. 7th minute of the game, this was when Brentford hadn't taken our foot off the gas yet. Brian gets the ball down the right-hand side, and immediately Sharda's running down the wing. And this is where I think we're going to have a lot of joy against Wolves if we get our tactics right, because their fullbacks, Ryan Aït-Nouri and Nelson Semedo. Ryan Aït-Nouri loves bombing forward, and we're going to get onto that danger that he poses in the other side of the field. But Nelson Semedo, I don't think has been there defensively this season, and I think that's a criticism that Wolves fans would level at him. Whilst he's good going forward, his defensive capabilities just aren't there. And when we've got wingers like Kevin Sharda and like KLP on the pitch who can hurt defenders in their 1v1 ability, it really could get bad for these Wolves fullbacks. So I'm hoping that we can set up in the right way. But anyway, ball gets played down to Sharda down the right. I think you can see KLP in the top left of your screen here. I don't think he does anything wrong. You can see that he's calling for it. If it's any other defender in this situation, I'm not sure they get across. But Wan-Bissaka, one of the best 1v1 defenders in the league. And it's testament to KLP for doing such a great job on him throughout the game, that he managed to kind of get these successful take-ons and get on the shoulder of Wan-Bissaka. But in this position, he gets a vital interception. But Nelson Semedo, I don't think he gets there. He's either too high up the pitch, or he's committed to a challenge in the middle of the pitch, which is what I'm going to get onto shortly. But I think there's joy to be had. This is Carvalho's first piece of kind of, it's defensive work but in the attacking third, and I feel like if we're going to become one of these transitional teams, which we were against Manchester City, winning the ball high up the pitch, Fabio I really think is a cheat code. He's so aggressive in turnovers and counter-pressing. He gets the ball here, well, the ball gets played into him, obviously I think that's Max Kilman who telegraphs the pass, but it doesn't matter because Fabio Carvalho is hot on his heels before that ball gets played to him. He gets there before him, plays in Kevin Sharda, and then we then win a free kick in a dangerous area. And from the resultant free kick, the ball comes in, played in by Fabio Carvalho. I do think that one thing that he needs to work on is his delivery. I know that he's been on corners, he's been on a few set pieces, but there was a couple of times in this game, not so much from the corners, but more from the free kicks, where it didn't beat the first man, which is a big no-no. I think there was one after this where it just hits Jarrod Bowen, who's just standing in Kudus' position there. But I hate seeing that at football matches. Not beating the first man is kind of a football cliche, but it happens a lot. And when it does happen, it's really frustrating. But it's not this one that doesn't work out. He actually lofts it into this position over here where all the players are. But the ball gets played out to Antonio, who is galloping down to the top right-hand side of the pitch. But just watch Fabio Carvalho's work rate. He's tracked him all the way from back here, all the way over here. And I know that got a big round of applause from the rest of the G-Tech, but he is just so aggressive in the counter-press. It's like he gives the ball away a lot, but he's so determined to get the ball back. And I love that about him so far. I feel like he could be, I don't want to put too much pressure on him, but in my opinion, for the next game, if Norgard is back, I think Vitali has to be dropped for Fabio Carvalho in terms of an attacking sense. I don't think he will, but that's what I want. I just want to highlight another strength of Fabio Carvalho's game, and I feel like I'm going to talk about him a lot in this video, but he really, really impressed me, especially for your like full home debut. He was fantastic. Ball gets played down to Aya, I think from West Ham long ball, and this is what we've been missing a lot. Vitali picks up the ball, which I think should be Norgard in the next game, plays it into Carvalho, and this little bounce pass here, Jensen can do this, Damsgaard can do this, but we've already got Damsgaard on the pitch. He's kind of playing that hybrid Jensen role, and again, Damsgaard, fantastic, nothing bad to say about him. I don't know if Jensen's going to be fit for the Wolves game, but I honestly, at the moment, I don't think that's necessary. What Damsgaard brings in terms of his take-on ability and his ability to carry the ball, his progressive carries, I think is far better than Jensen's. Whilst Jensen, he's kind of got a cheat code in that aspect because he can pick a really good pass. Damsgaard, he's such a great carrier of the ball. But anyway, back to this Carvalho pass. This little bounce pass in here, I think this is what we've been missing. It's cute. He sees the run of KLP, and these two combined all day long. I love to see it. Gets a little bounce pass. KLP's through. We start the counter, and it comes to nothing in the end. I think the ball gets played out to Aya down the left-hand side. It comes to nothing, but it's that kind of intricate play that maybe we haven't seen as much from Brentford over the past couple of seasons because we've had Tony and we've had to go a little bit more direct. But this season, I love it seeing this little tight play in these corners. The first goal against Palace, for example, this intricate, neat play in the middle of the pitch that gets us out of tight situations. And look, Aya's gone, Brian's gone, Sharda's gone, KLP's gone. He's got to have better decision-making in the final third, but it's really positive. We're overloading these areas, and I like to see how attacking we are against sides, but I just wish that we had this constantly throughout the game because I felt like once we allowed West Ham to get back into the game, it just took the sting out of it a little bit. Again, I want to highlight Carvalho here. Plays the ball out to KLP. I think KLP tries to play it into Aya here. We end up giving the ball away, but it doesn't matter because there's Carvalho again getting close to his man. His counter-press abilities is so good to stifle opposition who just aren't ready for it. No doubt Wolves would have studied this and know how aggressive he is when we've just lost the ball. But the signs are there for a really exciting player. He's cute in these tight areas. He doesn't mind losing the ball, doesn't mind losing the ball if he's going to try a fancy pass or if he's going to try and get by a man. But if you lose it, you have to want to get it back. And I feel like that is an aspect of his game that I think is going to stand him in good stead. Again, I feel like this highlight reel is just full of Fabio Carvalho highlights, but when I was watching the game, I knew that I was going to come into this video with a focus on Carvalho. Showing the desire to get the ball in front of the centre midfielder here, when he probably looks more likely to get there, but a little toe poke to Brian and some better passing from Brian in this area. Sharda's gone. I think he ends up just playing it sort of round and it kind of curves too much, a little bit too much weight on the pass. But nonetheless, it's Fabio's ability here. And again, 1, 2, 3. It's a 3v3. If we took a bit more time in this situation, or if Brian's pass is a bit better, we're on goal. So this was Wolves' game against Aston Villa just before they played Liverpool. And I'm not worried for this Wolves game. But if you look at Wolves and the way they've performed and the teams they've played, they've had the hardest start in the Premier League in terms of the teams they've played. But they've not been out of any games. And if you look at the first half specifically against Villa, they were really, really impressive. But I want to highlight Nelson Semedo here. The ball's kind of cannoning around the middle of the park. Nelson Semedo jumps out of position when he's normally playing right back to try and win this ball. He doesn't. John Duran gets it. There was a similar situation when we played City, when we gained the ball in and around this area here, and Vitali picked it up. And I said in my video, Sharda has to be spinning to get around Akanji and get the run on him, and it's exactly what Watkins does in this clip. If you see Watkins here, he has a little look. He knows that the 50-50 might fall to a Villa player. It ends up doing just that. Morgan Rogers is just there, and Watkins' movement is just to get around Craig Dawson, and it's exactly what he does, and he's got a shot on goal, and they end up scoring from that. But Nelson Semedo, him and KLP have history. I feel like it was in either the away replay when we played them in the Cup or in the home game, but those two were at each other the whole game, and I feel like KLP, considering Semedo's start to the season, there's been so much joy against Wolves down his side. I really think he could get the better of them this time, and he's showed it in a lot of the games that he's played so far. We just need to see a bit more attacking numbers from KLP, because dribbling 1v1 wise, I'd back him against anyone, because it's weird. We've said it before, he's not got a lot of pace, he's not got a lot of tricks, but his ball retention and his ability to keep the defender guessing right until the last moment, I think is going to be key. When you've got a player like Semedo who likes to jump in these rash challenges or likes to try and win the ball and not really go in wholeheartedly, KLP is going to have a lot of joy either exploiting this space down here or beating him in a 1v1. Again, this is the Wolves game. There's an overload of Wolves this third. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 Villa players. And to cover the right-hand side here, after I think that could be Gomez loses his challenge, Nelson Semedo, out of position again, comes in to tackle Yuri Tielemans, and already there's a gap that's going to be exploited by Morgan Rogers. And if we can get a hold of the ball in these areas against Wolves, or we can win our 50-50s, or we can get Fabio working in these areas when he can nip the ball off players or win that 50-50, there's going to be space to exploit for either KLP or Brian or Sharda to run into. In this instance, it's down Wolves' right, but I like the fact that Wolves are showing some defensive weaknesses that I know that if we're on our game, and that's a big if, but if we're on our game and we take the game to Wolves like we failed to do in large parts of the game against West Ham, there is joy to be had. Here, it comes out to Maatsen, I believe, on the left. He plays the ball into Morgan Rogers, and then he ends up playing it to John Duran, who's got a tap in at the back stick. But I need to see KLP tormenting Nelson Semedo, because I really feel like he's there to be got at in this game. And if we can get past him, there's going to be avenues. Because look, the similarities between Villa and Brentford in this situation: turnover in the middle of the park, similar to Fabio. John Duran, Leon Bailey, Morgan Rogers, they're all there. And the holes and the weaknesses are there to be seen. We just need to capitalise on them, because once they get into this position, they've got half of their midfield: Tommy Doyle, Nelson Semedo, I think that's Mateus Cunha, Mario Lemina, who's up there for some reason. I have no idea why. But their structure in the transition, I really think they're there to be got at. If we can win the ball in these areas and get the runners going like we always do, I think there's joy to be had. Anyway, back to our game. This is not how I think we're going to concede against Wolves if we do. And we're going to get on to why I think we do concede against Wolves. But this is it's just a really sloppy goal to concede. I think the ball comes out here, and I think Paqueta beats Damsgaard. I would have liked to see Damsgaard make a foul here. In this situation in 2v1, he kind of gets close to Paqueta, but he doesn't make the foul. And then, I mean, you cannot give Lucas Paqueta that amount of space. He doesn't end up playing that dangerous a ball, but just to have one of the most creative, if not the most creative players on the pitch, that amount of space in your final third, with all these bodies in your half, it spells danger, and we don't sniff it. We don't sniff it out. It comes to Jarrod Bowen, they play a 1-2, and it's just like, I think it's Sepp there, to just be pushing him and just to giving him a nudge instead of actually getting your foot in there. I know that they'll have watched that back and thought, we could have defended this so much better. Either Nathan Collins has got to come across instead of trying to block, or Sepp's got to put a foot in. But to just give him a push and allow him a free shot on goal when you've already got Thomas Souček, who we know is so good in the box, it just spells danger. And they get the goal, and it was just... West Ham had more XG than us in this game, probably because we had a lot of the ball but didn't really make any clear-cut chances. Well, definitely because of that. But just for the game to kind of fizzle out after this was scored, I think it did show the gap between the two sides. I know Lopetegui is quite early on in his West Ham tenure, and he's got the players to turn it around for sure. But it was a perfect time to play West Ham and a perfect time to put them to the sword. And I think, as you'll see, we didn't really start playing until we got to... This is the West Ham goal, just after half-time here. I want to take a look at this memento bar in the left-hand corner of your screen. West Ham get their goal. They're on top for about 10-15 minutes, and then it's Brentford for the rest of the game. We didn't create any clear-cut opportunities from them, but it was just strange. And I just want to highlight as well, going back to what I said at the start of the video, the heat maps of the players. So we figured that Kevin Schade and Brian Mbeumo, Kevin would be playing down the middle and Brian would be on the right cutting in. But as you can see, average positions of both, they're kind of occupying the same position. Kevin more likely to go down the wing, and Brian is just everywhere really. But I love the interchangeability, and to have Brian in the box, who's definitely a much more lethal finisher than Kevin Schade, was great to see. But I like how tight they are together, and obviously KLP's providing the width down the other side. But Fabio Carvalho's positioning as well, his heat map, obviously dominating that kind of area, winning the ball back in these kinds of areas. It's where we can hurt Wolves, and there is no doubt Thomas Frank will be saying this to the team. If we can turn the ball over and focus it down this side when we've got Keane Lewis Potter, number 23, and Fabio Carvalho in these areas to win the ball back, I can just imagine already Fabio Carvalho nicking the ball off Nelson Semedo, he feeds KLP, and then we've got Brian Mbeumo, we've got Kevin Schade to be in there behind. So this is just another chance that Craig pointed out on the Eden Road podcast. Like I said at the top of the show, if you haven't already, go check that out. That's out now. KLP gets the ball down the left, and it happens quite a lot with KLP. He gets into these situations where he beats his fullback, and from this position, I want him to drive across or run at the defender here, who I think is Todibo. If he makes that run across, then he brings Fabio into play, he brings Schade into play, and he brings Mbeumo into play a lot earlier in the phase of play. But instead he goes down the line, and for someone who is so right-footed and who wants to come inside and shoot on his right, to go down the left here, it's not a terrible run to make because you've got Fabio bursting into the box and you've got Brian. But I'd like to see him come inside a little bit earlier and a little bit more often, because when he does get into these positions, for example, if we just take it back here, Todibo comes to press, that frees up Fabio Carvalho, or he backs off and KLP just keeps going and it brings into play Brian Mbeumo at the top of your screen, or Kevin Schade at the top of your screen. But instead he goes down the line, and it's not an awful pass, but I think Fabio stumbles here and the defender is able to get across. But I just need to see a little bit more from KLP in these moments, being a little bit more direct and driving towards the goal as opposed to the byline. getting on his right foot, and when he gets into these situations, not firing a shot straight at the goalkeeper, which he does quite a bit. I just need to see more of it from him. And I'm not getting frustrated with him, but I need to see the numbers now, because he plays well. He gets the better of fullbacks when you don't expect him to, but we need to see the numbers. Last couple of clips, both on Fabio Carvalho. He gets the ball in the penalty box, doesn't make the most of it. He actually gets, I was about to say he gets fouled, but he kind of gets bundled over by Jared Bowen. It's not a foul, but his ability and his determination to get up and turn the ball over yet again gives it to Vitali. It ends up coming to nothing. But like I've said, I can really imagine Carvalho being in this situation when it's not maybe an established fullback like Wan-Bissaka, or it's not all of these players boxed in and Wolves have got the game stretched because their midfielders like to attack a lot. I can really imagine Carvalho pinching the ball here, and if KLP's in a better position, I'm not sure what he's doing over there on the right, but if he's in a better position there, there's space to be exploited down this left-hand side. Again, this is the last one that I'm going to show on Carvalho's ability to win the ball back, but it's like 5 times I've mentioned in this video his turnovers, and they're all high up the pitch, which I love. Aya gets the ball, drives down the left, plays a poor pass into KLP, who's not able to retain it. But Carvalho sees the danger already. He spotted it, wins the ball back, gives it back to Yama, and it comes to nothing in the end. But I just want to go back to how we're going to set up against Wolves. I don't imagine we go to a back 5, considering they play with a back 4, and that's a kind of Thomas Frank tendency when we play against teams in the top 6. However, if Norgard is back, I would do a straight swap for Janelt and Norgard. I bring Janelt on the bench. I put Norgard there. I give Damsgaard a little bit of license to do what he was doing against West Ham in terms of going forward and exploiting these spaces here, and also getting into these pockets over here, but also being able to collect the ball off the back 4, which I think he did really well, especially in those areas. What you lose in Jensen, maybe his calmness on the ball and his ability to put his foot on the ball and pick a pass. With Damsgaard, it's a little bit more fast-paced, and I like that, because with the players that we've got in our front line now, I do think we probably need to be a bit more fast-paced. Whether Jensen comes back into the team when he's fit again, I don't know. But it's good options to have when he's fit again, I say in inverted commas, because we know with the Brentford medical team that despite the timeline they put on it, it's never usually that. We've now got 8 players out injured, I believe, whenever any of them are all back. Who the hell knows? But I'd like to see Norgard. This is how I like to see us line up against Wolves. What I think he'll do, if Norgard is fit, is replace Damsgaard with Vitali or Fabio with Vitali, and we'll go a little bit more conservative. But like I mentioned in the video, these 4 in midfield, Cunha, Lemina, João Gomez and Bellegarde, they all like to get forward. They've kind of bought Andre over the summer as this deep-lying midfielder, and he stays put a lot of the time. But when these 4 bomb forward, or when the ball is congested in these midfield areas, Carvalho's ball-winning ability will be absolutely key. And if he's not in the side, I really think Wolves might be able to hurt us, because when we've had joy against Tottenham and against Man City, it's from winning these balls when we're up here. Everyone's a yard further up. We've got Norgard there, kind of on the halfway line. We've got Damsgaard up here. We've got KLP hugging the touchline over here. And then we've got Brian and Shardo around here. But Fabio's ability, and it's not going to be hard. It's not going to be difficult for him. Lemina's a unit. João Gomez is a great player. Cunha, we're going to talk about him in a minute, I think is such a fantastic footballer. And if he doesn't get snapped up by a top 6 club in the next transfer window, be that January or summer, I'd be massively surprised. But this is where the game's going to be won and lost in these areas for me. The Wolves midfield does scare me. It scares me the fact that they've not had a